The Everything Apartments podcast is provided with support from the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, better known as AGLA, serving residential landlords throughout Southern California through education and advocacy. Visit aagla.org. Hello, everybody. Eric Christopher here, and you're listening to the Everything Apartments podcast, where we dig into all aspects of multifamily investments, from buying and financing properties, day-to-day operations and management, and also reinvestment strategies. This is part two of our property sales series. Now, if you didn't listen or watch the first episode of the series, I encourage you to do so. It's there in the podcast list or on the YouTube videos. In part one, we started with the motivations of an owner to sell the property. What kind of plan could there be behind that and how we might be able to help? And then we moved into analyzing the value of the property and the things that drive that. And now we'll be progressing into the listing. And where we left off was, how will we present your property to the market in the best, most efficient way possible? But first, I'll tell you about our firm, WSC Realty Advisors and WSC Property Management. WSC has been helping buyers and sellers and managing apartment properties in Long Beach for just under 20 years now. Let's say you're tired of managing your own units. You want to travel more, maybe relax more on vacation without worrying about a plumbing leak or some other issue and you're far away from home. Or maybe you have a manager and you're just not quite getting the response or the results you're looking for. It could be a length of vacancy, lingering repair issues, flimsy reporting. We can definitely help you. WSC isn't here to be the biggest management firm in Long Beach. Instead, we stay smaller and more agile to bring you the quality of service you want. For example, we get our owner reports out to you by the 10th of the following month, or your next month of management is free, but we've never failed on that. We can also help if you're looking to acquire more units here or out of state, or looking to do a 1031 exchange. Visit wsc-pm.com. Call, text, or email. Obviously, that information is all in the show notes, or if you're watching YouTube, it's right on the screen next to me. Whatever the challenge is with your property, WSC has the solution. Now, in order to take your property out to the market in the best fashion and the most efficient way possible, let's take a side step before we dig into the actual listing marketing. Are there some thoughtful upgrades or beautification you can do prior to marketing that will generate just a little more interest than if you hadn't have done that? When we talk about curb appeal, that's something that's usually kind of connected to a residential single family home, maybe somewhere where you'll actually live. You pull up to the house with the realtor and you begin to draw a picture pretty quickly if you could see yourself living there, sort of just based on how the exterior presents. Now, this may not be as vital of a component with an investment property, but there's also a human nature component involved in no matter what kind of sale it is. There's different kinds of buyers. Some would take a look at the front and not even really pay attention to it, knowing they could change it the way they wanted to. But there are others that may be a little more affected by how the curb appeal looks. Now, here's a listing I'm working on securing now. By no stretch does it look shabby or unkempt. It actually looks very clean, and it may even present a little better in person than it does in this picture. But the point I'm trying to make is the owner is considering painting it prior to listing it. So I used a couple of my contacts that I've done business for in the past for this kind of project. And it's really cool nowadays. The painting contractors can use, I think that some of the manufacturers like Sherwin-Williams and stuff, you can take a picture of the front of the property and really model it up with some of the different color combinations that are available out there. So here's a good example of one. And here's a secondary option that the painting contractor gave us. Now, obviously, they're both really visually appealing, but the catch is this. We got quotes from a couple contractors, and to paint and preserve that entire property is going to be somewhere in the way of $35,000. Looking at that, it's hard to believe that if you did put that investment in and planning to sell it, that you would recover that investment on a one-to-one basis at the sale price. So certainly nobody would say, oh, it doesn't look better with the new paint on it. Somebody who's going to keep the property for a real long time, say into the next generation or something, and it truly needs a new paint job, well, great, go ahead and do it. But in a scenario where the property is going to be listed for sale, does it make sense to spend that? And the key here is cost-effective upgrades. Something where you can get a good bang for your buck. Now, I like what the owner's planning to do now. Instead of doing the entire project, he contacted the painting contractor saying, look, get me a new color scheme that blends closely with the existing And this way I could do the front, preserve and paint the entire front. It'll still match pretty well with the rest of the building, but may entice just one or two more people that were driving by, taking kind of a neighborhood look view on the property earlier on, and have them be a little more interested than they were otherwise. How about a little landscaping upgrade with a few new plants, maybe some color? How about a small water feature, perhaps in the common area? You know, those 3 to 4 tier cement fountains that cascade water across the levels are not terribly expensive. And especially on a property that's maybe in a higher noise environment, they do a really great job to drown out the noise. The tenants appreciate it, and so will the buyers. So getting back, the idea is to get some bang for your buck. The goal is to perhaps have one or more potential buyers take a stronger interest because the initial presentation was improved. So the following activity on that would be, if the exterior was improved in a meaningful way, we would obviously go back and get fresh pictures of the upgrades and load those pictures into the offering memorandum, which is typically called an OM, so that we have the best presentation of the property photographically and when the person rolls up to take a look. Now, once we've loaded the new pictures into the offering memorandum, I'll show you how we're also going to use those same pictures. We'll get into the listing marketing. Now, what you see in front of you is the property marketing plan. I typically call this the marketing scorecard. Haven't done this for almost 2 decades. I've developed this over time, and I use it on all my listings. Now, this serves a few purposes, but for our discussion, it's all about keeping you, the seller, in the loop about all the marketing efforts we engage to generate the interest, when those things are going to happen, hopefully developing more offers. Now, we begin with the preparation of the marketing right as we have the listing paperwork done. Most of the items will utilize images for the property. So like I mentioned a few minutes ago, that if there are new media that we'd like to use in the marketing, we definitely will. At that point, we'll also order drone photography if we haven't already. And that's all going to get a usable version of the offering memorandum, which is probably already done in 90% fashion, maybe dress up a few more details that we recently learned and the new photos. So simultaneously, what we'll do once we have the finalized photographs is send off the design for the postcard to our graphic artist, get that all dialed in. Once that's completed, we're actually working on the proper list. Now, we normally send about 2,000 to 3,000 of these postcards out. On this particular listing, we looked up similar properties that is built before 1940 in 90813 zip code and a few of the surrounding zip codes. We found plenty of owners. These are the most high probability buyers because they own similar properties in the same location. So this is an example of an e-blast. What I've done over the last almost 20 years is develop a very strong database of owners and literally collected emails one by one up to the point where I have just under 2,400 of them, very high quality. I've kept in touch with a lot of these people over the years. They know my name, and typically when there's a listing involved on an email subject line, they will definitely open it. So that also goes out. And the beauty, obviously, of the electronic marketing is it's got almost an immediate feedback loop to it. So kind of keeping track of it on the property marketing plan scorecard. Obviously, these top items were completed with notes. We sent out a e-blast of just under 2,400 recipients that I just showed you the example. We had 478 people open it. Now there's a link in the email to open up the offering memorandum. 59 people came through. So that's not a bad return. You know, if you can get close to 5 to 10% range opening it and then get a fair amount of click-throughs, that's a pretty good start. Now, what we do with the people that click through is many of them, you can identify who they are with their email address, but many of them we have phone numbers for. So we will take the time to try to launch phone calls with the people, follow up, see if they have any other questions, where they're at perhaps in their buying process, and perhaps get a stronger discussion going around this listing. The next thing we do is a text marketing. And I know, almost none of us really like that on a day-to-day basis. We're getting kind of random cold spam text. But again, this is a list of phone numbers that I've developed personally, one by one, really, over the last 19 years. And when it's something we are interested in, we do take an interest to text advertising. So we did that, sent out 500 plus of those, and we got some click-throughs on that to the offering memorandum, which works kind of the same way as the email link. Now, we do phase this stuff in. As you can see, there's kind of a timeline we follow from starting with obviously getting the items prepared, but then doing the e-blast, the text blast, the mailing. And then as we phase through, as you can see, direct mail and advertising, I've got a key group of prospects that I've known, let's say extra well over the last 19 years. And those are people that will generally take my call and listen to my ideas. I like to take special attention with them, send them an executive summary, which is a snapshot of the offering memorandum, follow that up with a phone call. Now you can kind of see down just a little bit where personal database marketing, outbound calls, we begin to do that. Just as a matter of practice, we look up people that are in escrow on smaller properties. Let's say somebody's selling a 3 or 4 unit property, is planning to do a 1031 exchange, could fit into this listing. These are the kind of conversations we love to get into. We've now executed the postcard mailing. That does take a little bit of time from the time you want to design it, go back, oh, this is wrong, or we want to upgrade this wording, or whatever that is. We do get that out timely, and we also do a listing announcement on the next episode of this very podcast. So I like to put in a little advertising, let's say kind of commercial for the listing itself. That helps a little bit. And finally, we go out to the public internet platforms, MLS, LoopNet, CoStar, Zillow. Prior to this, we've been kind of talking to organic buyers. These are people that I may have known, rubbed elbows with, talked to a number of times, etc. Now we're opening up to the public channels. And this is where the fun begins, because you have agents from all over the globe and different experience levels. It's very difficult to decipher who's got a serious buyer and who doesn't, but it's obviously a very viable way to market properties in all channels. So as you can see, we use every channel we can think of to get this property out into the world, exposed, bring up the probability of the right kind of buyer or buyers coming through. Now, in addition to that, again, being at this for a very long time, I've got to know a core group of agents in the Long Beach market. These are guys and gals that know how to do their job and do a very effective job on it. I like to also, just like important buyers, I like to pay attention to the important brokers out there. So what I typically do with these listings, personally contact the core group of agents that I've known and worked with for a long time and expose the property to them one-on-one. They definitely may have a buyer that may want to take a look at it closer than they may have not have seen it or had time to investigate it on the MLS or something like that. So what we talked about up to this point is our efforts. Now, our efforts are designed for one thing and one thing only: generate interest in the property for purposes of getting offers. What you'll see in the lower part of this is kind of the results section. I record every inquiry, I record every meeting, every showing. So what I do with this form is I typically send it to you about once a week or a week and a half or so when there's relevant information being added to it, so you know exactly where you're at all the time. So obviously we've got a set of inquiries once the property hit the market, phone calls coming in, emails, broker inquiries, personal previous buyer relationships. So we've got inquiries. We always get a couple lowball offers. Hey, we'd like to talk about paying you all cash for this property at 1.3 million. A lot of those times, I don't think we're going to have a real meaningful discussion with somebody that's hundreds of thousands of dollars away. So that's a point where we keep continuing our marketing. As you can see, there was a showing there. That was a previous client that I've worked with, and 2 offers developed from that. So in the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about when the offers come in, what do we do with each offer? And how do we take those offers in a way that leverages your position and allows you to put the best buyer into contract? Now, if you haven't listened to the Sales Series Part 1, I totally encourage you to do so. This has been the Everything Apartments Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Christopher, and stay tuned for another episode coming soon.